policy think tank, Imani Africa, has waded into the controversial StarTimes debate, demanding transparency on how the Chinese firm was awarded a contract to enhance and manage Ghana's digital television space. Government has received public backlash for granting tax waivers to StarTimes in the execution of a satellite distribution contract, with stakeholders arguing it will create an equal playing field for local players. Well, Imani and your most credible news source, JoyNews, brings to you a public forum dubbed Unpacking Ghana's Dance with China's Media Dragons. The curious case of StarTimes. The question to be explored is, are Ghanaian media owners and practitioners afraid of Chinese competition, or Ghana is simply unclear about the Chinese state-led media strategy in Africa? Let's take you live to the Coconut Grove Hotel.
Is afraid of Chinese competition, or Ghana is simply unclear about the Chinese state-led media strategy in Africa. I'm Samson Ladi Ayenini. I'm happy to be your moderator for this morning. We will take a welcome note very briefly in less than 3 minutes. Then after that, I will lay out the modalities for this interaction. We have a host of stakeholders here who will be engaged to help us to unpack and clearly understand what is going on. Let me now welcome Kofi Benton, who is Senior Vice President of Imani Africa. And thank you also for staying tuned to Joy 99.7 FM and on JoyNews channel on your multi-TV. Thank you.
Thank you, Samson, and good morning. My job is simple. It is to welcome you all, so you are welcome. I just like to read something short, and this is the very first paragraph of our recent publication on Ghana's relationship with China relating to the bauxite deal that we just had. And the first heading, first paragraph, first line says that China is not the problem. The entry of China as a major actor on the international development scene is a highly positive trend. Despite the shrill protest of some Western propaganda outlets, Imani's perception of the China factor is influenced by the belief that China brings much needed diversification to the sources of international development finance. Second heading says, our leaders must be thorough. As staunch critics of the development cooperation model pushed by the West in Africa for decades now, we have always welcomed China's strictly transactional approach as a means to unsettle the status quo. But there is a caveat. African leaders in Ghana and elsewhere need to take responsibility for whether or not Africans get a good deal. There are no multilateral development institutions and jargons of good governance to hide behind now. Africa and Ghana need leaders that are savvy, detail-oriented, and strategically brilliant to avoid being out-negotiated, dominated, and outmaneuvered by Chinese negotiators, who are among the best in the world. The lazy approach to deal-making that we have seen in many instances in the past will simply not do. That is why Imani continues to put spotlight on government actions involving Chinese deal-making. I read this, and it's available online. You can go back and read it over and over again. The first point that we need to establish is that we are not against the Chinese. We are not against Chinese money. We are not against Chinese development assistance or interaction with us. Indeed, we want that. We need a balance against the West. But that balance does not come free. If we don't get our act together and do our homework, and I say here that in almost all of the deals we've done with the Chinese that we have scrutinized at Imani, from NDC time and even beyond, we did not do our homework well. We go there and throw a Hail Mary and hope that things are going to work out. Things don't work out that way. Every Chinese gift is a Trojan horse. If you don't deal with it well, it will hurt you in the end. And it's not because the Chinese are bad. They are an influence for good. They are here to make sure that we do our homework. The Chinese do not assume the responsibility of thinking for you or doing what you need to do. And if you negotiate badly, they will take their pound of flesh, even if you die. So in conclusion, we need to appreciate that China is good, But the extent to which China will be good for you depends on how much thinking you do before you go, and how alert you are when you are there, and how you conduct yourself even after you've done the negotiation. I wish to say welcome again. This is the kind of framework under which we want to take a look at the StarTimes deal. It is not bad by itself. Maybe what will make it bad is our own lack of diligence in dealing with the issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we are on Joy 99.7 FM and on your multi-TV. This is JoyNews channel. We are here to see if by close of the event, we will have an enhancement to our television viewing so that you may see the channel you're watching right now even a lot more better and clearer. We have about 6 representations here from important stakeholders in the DTT platform project. And each representative will be speaking for between 5 to 10 minutes. And when they are done, there will be an opportunity for an interaction so that you can ask your questions, and there are also others who are listening and watching us who may also send their questions and contributions that will also be addressed by our guest. Now, bottom line, in 2012, there was a company by name StarTimes DTV. It's a locally Ghanaian-owned company. It got into a contract with Ghana to supply and install the facilities that are required for the DTT platform. Remember that we have a global deadline to meet. The global deadline originally was 2015. We understand right now that Ghana is hoping to meet the deadline for 2020. We have missed the deadline 3 times already, if I'm correct about that. Now, StarTimes DTV took a contract, we understand, for $95 million. It was supposed to get the money from the China Development Bank. It took the contract in April of 2012. By September of 2012, it had assigned its rights and obligations to StarTimes China. StarTimes China was to undertake the project, sourcing funding from the Exim Bank, the China Exim Bank. Somehow, in almost 3 years, it was unable to deliver to assist Ghana meet the deadline. So the government of Ghana took a decision to terminate that contract, because under a clause 41 of that contract, Ghana had the right to terminate the contract and to pay to StarTimes China for whatever it had done up to that point. Upon the termination, StarTimes China took up a suit challenging the termination as wrongful. In the High Court, the court determined in favor of Ghana that Ghana had a right to terminate. Eventually awarded cost of $50,000 against StarTimes China. Unsatisfied, it made an appeal. The appeal was unsuccessful because the Court of Appeal endorsed what the High Court had determined. Still not satisfied, it proceeded to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court endorsed the previous decisions. Since the door was shut at that point, it determined that it had to go to international arbitration in London. It filed an arbitration, and at the arbitration, Ghana proposed that the issue be dealt with in 2 phases, in what is known as phasing in arbitration, or mildly put, bifurcation. The tribunal agreed and consequently determined whether or not Ghana had terminated the agreement wrongfully and that it had a right to terminate. It gave its decision, and the decision was that Ghana had done no wrong in the termination. Now, in 2017, we have decided as a country to suspend the processes pending in the International Tribunal. And to meet with China, we have signed a memorandum of understanding that we will take the matter, we will all agree to take the matter out of arbitration. So presently, there's a suspension of the process, and then eventually we are taking everything out. Then what happens? The contract will eventually be given to StarTimes, China. We understand that upon the termination, the contract was re-awarded to KNet, a Ghanaian company. KNet got the contract for $82.4 million, $13 million less than the original contract sum. We understand that StarTimes China did an audit of the work that KNet has done and came to the conclusion that KNet did an excellent job. In fact, the Ministry of Communications very recently had praised KNet for doing an amazing job, amazing quote-unquote job. However, we still find that there's need to enhance what StarTimes has done. And for the enhancement project, that is what okay. So for the enhancement project, that is what we are now about to go into. It does appear that will cost us the previous original contract sum. This is what has raised questions. We will, at this juncture, invite Franklin Kujo, who is president of Imani Africa, to tell us what the Ministry of Communication has to offer, because they are supposed to be in this building right now. And after that, we'll invite our guests who are here one by one to tell us why this contract is good or is not good. Let's welcome Franklin Kujo.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Samson. I just have a response on the ministry. This is Honorable George Anda responding to why they may not be able to come. Actually, they are not likely to be here today because they had previously announced a program. They are launching the 300 community satellite TV project, and so unfortunately they can't be here. I presume they'll be monitoring. I think this is one of the gifts Kofi Bento talked about. So they are launching that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're on Joy 99.7 FM and multi-TV JoyNews channel. If I may know, if we have a representation of StarTimes and KNet here in this auditorium. KNet and StarTimes. KNet and StarTimes are invited to be part of this discussion. Okay, so if we do not have a representation from KNet and StarTimes presently here, let me invite the following persons who are already here to take their seat at the high table to begin their presentations. We have from the GIBA, there's a Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association. We have its presidents, Andrew, Danso, and Inkra. He's here. Thank you very much. Please, you may take your seat here. Also here from the Media Foundation for West Africa is its Executive Director, Suleiman Abrahima. Thank you very much for coming. I thought I saw just a while ago Samuel Neti George. Thank you very much. He's the MP for Ningo Pram Pram. Thank you very much. He's also a member of the Select Committee in Parliament of the Telecommunications Communications Subgroup. Also here, one of those who are, you may term, the primary key stakeholders in this enterprise. We have from Crystal Television, Prince Crystal, thank you very much. Prince Crystal, thank you very much. Also, I understand, because we have the president of GIBA here, do we still have Gloria Haji to join the high table? Thank you very much, thank you. She's also from GIBA. Right, now in due course, there are a couple of people who will make some remarks and I will introduce them to you. But let's start off with getting to understand, once again, why GIBA has a position asking and crusading for the entire country to support it against the supply and installation that StarTimes China is supposed to do as far as the DTT migration program is concerned. So let's welcome Andrew Danso. Andrew Danso. Yes, please. So in the next 5-10 minutes, if you can do less than 10 minutes, that'll be good. 3 minutes. Okay.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I don't have that flair of being diplomatic, so let me observe all protocols so that I don't make an attempt at recognizing some and leaving some. It's a privilege to address such an august gathering and to let you also understand how come GIBA is involved in this whole issue. Something has already taken us through the history, what is behind the StarTimes saga, as we may put it at the moment. But what is of interest to us, especially in GIBA, is the fact that what we hear, what we are following, what we are reading is not new. That the attempt had been made previously and that it had been stopped. We do not seem to understand why the ministry is keeping quiet, not answering questions that we are putting across. We do not also understand why, as private broadcasters, because that is what GIBA represents, we cannot talk for anybody except the Ghanaian independent broadcaster. So if we are making noise as we have been described, and if it is sounding ugly, that is what we can do, at least to be heard. We do not understand why we have made sacrifices in giving away analog infrastructure, our investment in analog, and we know that we have benefits from digital. We have been told we are 95% to the line, the finish line, and for all this while, there is a delay. The excuse about funding for us does not come up, because at the point when we had zero funding, we managed to find some money. And if you can hatch one egg to produce more eggs, if you want more eggs, you hatch 2, you hatch 3. If from one block of the analog spectrum, we could make money. We believe we can go back if we have 3 other blocks to sell. Giba found it a bit difficult understanding what benefits the people of this country, what benefits the private entrepreneur in Ghana was not becoming top priority for the Ministry of Communication, which had the mandate to ensure that we got what we needed. Unfortunately, our request to be heard had been termed dictatorship. Giba is also of the opinion that we are not the only end beneficiaries. If the DTT platform could be switched on, if the analog will be switched off. We believe that it enables other stakeholders in terms of those who sell television sets, those who sell the receivers, those who build antennas, those who mount antennas, to know which direction they are going to. In fact, come to think of it, if you would go right now out there and import analog television sets, only to be told tomorrow you cannot use them, the question you ask is, who has misled you? But when we are telling the general public that there is the need for us to go DTT, we are being told we are misleading the public. That is unfortunate. We believe that at the end of this discussion, the interest of this country will be brought out, the interest of the individual private broadcaster will be brought out, and whatever is not being done properly will be ironed out, and we'll all be satisfied. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President of Giba. And as we know, there is a parliamentary intervention, and also the ministry has indicated that it is meeting with the stakeholders. Is it tomorrow? So let's look forward to all of that put together. Now, our country is supposed to be one of the countries that is the most saturated when it comes to radio broadcasting. The country has 400 and upwards of 32 or so radio stations, although 89 of them are not in operation. When it comes to television, we are supposed to have 85 of them licenses issued, but 34 of them are not in operation. Chief Crystal, he is in this business. He may tell us why the situation is what it is, and what it is that the migration, the DTT migration, brings to television viewing in this country, and why particularly they are unhappy about the current arrangements. Let's welcome Chief Crystal.
Good morning. Just as my president mentioned earlier, I would also say all protocols observed. First of all, I would like to make a correction. My name is Prince Harry Crystal and not Chief Crystal. And I am also the Executive Council member on Giba. So I am here representing Giba and not my private TV network, Crystal TV, even though I am a strong player in the industry. We have a roadmap in Ghana regarding the migration from analog TV transmissions to digital TV transmissions. And as a matter of fact, I would like for us to appreciate where Ghana has come from to the point at which we are, and then all the issues surrounding StarTime's involvement in the DTT arena, and then also what Giba actually has as its core issues. We have had a lot of information put out in the public. I'm sure most of you are privy to the 6-page document or article that we put in the newspaper. Every Ghanaian who has paid particular attention to reading every single word of what has been put out in the article would sincerely appreciate that we speak for Ghana as independent broadcasters in this country. We are not speaking for our individual memberships, but we are speaking for the entire broadcast fraternity of this country. Now, just a brief about analog to digital transmissions. In the year 2006, Ghana signed or was a party to signing an agreement in Geneva for the adoption of migrating from analog systems to digital systems for TV broadcast. Now, after 2006 agreement, the government of Ghana, NCA, decided in 2007 to constitute a technical committee bringing together experts in the industry from all forms, all facets of engineering facets of Ghana. So we look at the University of Ghana professors and engineers, we look at KNUST, we look at other stakeholders in the industry like Ghana Standards Authority, the NCA themselves. And so we think today, granting access to satellite television for 300 villages, as has been put, which today we hear it's rather communities. I don't know why it's changed from villages to communities, would be a betrayal of the digital roadmap, migration roadmap for Ghana. Quite a number of people have asked questions in the past. Do we really have a strategy for migrating television systems from analog to digital? Yes, we do. We do because this technical committee called the National Digital Migration Technical Committee put together a recommendation after a series of deliberations, series of consultations with all stakeholders in Ghana to present to government as our roadmap or a blueprint where we follow to migrate analog systems to digital. So I'd like to explain why we say the 300 access to satellite TV for the villages in Ghana is a betrayal of the digital migration roadmap. So if someone can help me with the next slide, I would. So now it is manifestly clear that such a project would not be consistent with the agreed roadmap to deliver the nation's migration through digital terrestrial television, which we call DTT technology, following the government of Ghana's agreement with the International Telecommunications Union to migrate from analog to digital television broadcasting. So it is an issue of profound impact going through the migration process, which we think is of a national priority to the people of this country. And it's too fast. So we therefore think that it should be of serious concern to the government, who is currently providing leadership in this process. And when we talk about leadership, we're already experiencing the support, immense support given to an individual entity in deviation from the roadmap which meant to adopt DTT instead of DTH for the migration of analog systems to digital systems in Ghana. So in 2007, the NCA set up an industry technical committee comprising the state broadcaster, Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, GBC, the private TV stations represented by an able association, Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, government representatives and other stakeholders, namely the Ghana Standards Authority, because they were very relevant in making sure the minimum specifications for DTT standards are conformed to, and not only for Ghana, but adopted as an ECOWAS conformance regime. We had the National Media Commission, also as part of the Industry Technical Committee that was set up in 2007, and other consumer protection agencies, Ghana Institute of Engineers, among others. So these recommendations that were made by these industry experts led to the establishment of what we know as the National Digital Broadcasting Migration Technical Committee by the Ministry of Communications on the 13th of January 2010. So we had a deadline to meet, which was scheduled for June 17, 2015. So way back in 2010, a technical committee, NDBTC, has been put together to lead us technically, telling us how the country should migrate or could migrate to digital systems. Now, even before 2010 and even before 2007, under former President Kufuor's government, these technical team were already consulted in the year 2004, which now culminated in the establishment of the committee proper in 2010. I am trying to let you have a premise for why we say we are deviating, or the Ministry of Communication is derailing the effort to migrate via DTT. It was concluded that Ghana's transition from analog to digital broadcasting should be rolled out with the setup of a national digital terrestrial platform, instead of using satellite transmissions as direct-to-home service. I would explain technically and probably making it a bit easy for the ordinary Ghanaian to understand what we mean by this. Now, DTT basically is transmitting locally within the territory of Ghana. So that is why terrestrial comes in. And then DTH, which is direct to home, is simply saying that your transmission is coming from orbit, from satellite, from space, and is hitting Earth directly to your home. This is the basic difference between DTT and DTH. Technically, there are a lot of advantages and probably demerits in both instances, but ultimately, there were deliberations on whether to use satellite to migrate the country or use terrestrial means to migrate the country. Currently, in the analog domain, we are all transmitting within the territory of Ghana, terrestrially, but in analog mode. So this technical committee concluded that we should rather choose the DTT rather than choose the DTH. And there are several technical reasons, economical reasons, intellectual property rights issues that gave rise to choosing the DTT over DTH. The DTT broadcast mode was chosen after several deliberations, consultations, and considerations as a more reliable and dependable mode of broadcasting that the nation would have full control. So this is a key word, full control over its operations and broadcast platform. Broadcasting in every nation is an important national asset. And you cannot dare to mortgage it in any way, in any form. And as enshrined in the 1992 Constitution of Ghana, there is full protection for broadcasting as a medium of mass communication in this country. So among the several reasons for the choice of DTT was the fact that as a sovereign nation, Ghana should be able to have a state-owned broadcasting infrastructure devoid of external influence and control. So in the analog domain, you realize that TV3 has their transmission site probably at Ajangote, and Kantanka TV has their own at Dansoman. Crystal TV may have theirs at Ajangote or Legon. We have Metro TV somewhere else. So when a viewer points a signal attempting to have good reception, you would have adjacent interferences, ghost pictures, blurred images, and so on and so forth. So the same technical committee, DBMC, recommended that to consolidate our efforts in making sure the end user or the beneficiaries of the signals we put forth as broadcasters enjoy to the maximum benefit when we migrate to digital. It was decided that all TV networks should now be under one roof. Instead of having your transmission stations scattered across Accra, scattered across Kumasi, or all the other 9 regional centers in this country. So this only meant that the country agreed to migrate and create a single monopoly. So every broadcaster in this country was consulted during the stakeholder consultation period of the DBMC. So we all agreed that, yes, we agreed to send our signals to one infrastructure where everybody can have full access to us evenly, good picture quality, good sound quality, and so on and so forth. Now, this also presents spectral dividend or spectrum dividend to the nation. I'll try to make it more quicker so we can get to the core of the issue. Now, in the case of DTH, through the policy as part of the transition, it would mean that the country would depend primarily on satellite broadcasting for communications to households, even though the state would not have any sovereign control over the satellite in space. So satellite in space is provided by other service providers like Eutelsat, Arabsat, SES, Intelsat, Amos, and the likes. So these satellites that have been shot into space are not owned by Ghana. So in effect, if we transmit or migrate this country through DTH, there could be anything that could happen, which in technical terms we call fatality. Fatality simply means you would realize that the satellite, after some conflict, would disappear in space. So all your broadcast, data, information, everything gets lost. So it only means that Ghana's transmission could just go off in a twinkle of an eye. And these satellites have expiration dates. They are not permanent in orbit, so they all have their expiry dates. So it will not augur well for a sovereign nation to have satellite as a means of migrating the country. The other reasons also boil down to even the consumers. It would also mean that every household will have to put satellite dishes on top of their roofs to be able to receive our free-to-air channels. Other reasons also boil down to intellectual property rights, because every TV network acquires content rights for each territory. So if you see a TV network showing an African movie, the African movie has been acquired for only Ghana. If you see a TV network showing FIFA game, the FIFA game has been acquired for only Ghana. So if you use satellite to transmit free-to-air, it means that you will go beyond the territory of Ghana and have spillage into other territories. So then satellite still will not be a viable option to migrate the country. So several technical, socio-economic reasons were given, and we chose to use DTT. So now we are at the state and readiness of deployment through the DTT infrastructure. To facilitate the digital switch on, the government opted for a single national platform provider, single distributor for free-to-air. FTA means free-to-air, free-to-air services after mutual discussions with broadcast stakeholders in Ghana. So when we hear, where were you, Giba, in all of this process, it amazes us. It baffles us, because Giba has been in this whole process thick and thin, even before the year 2000, because every broadcaster thinks about the future, what's going to happen, because transmission systems have expiry periods. Technology changes at the speed of light. So Giba has been through all this with the National Digital Migration Committee, also through the NCA, and even in consultation with the Ministry of Communication. So the big question is, why, having made so much gains in the deployment of necessary infrastructure for DTT services and the approval of free-to-air set-top boxes and integrated digital television sets, which many of you call digital TVs or LED screens, set by the National Communications Authority, following a global publication of Ghana's DTT receiver standards and specifications, GS 1099, by the Ghana Standards Authority, are we now recommending a government-led shift in deviation from the roadmap? The roadmap says we use DTT to deploy or migrate the country. Now we are seeing the Ministry of Communications championing and supporting a private entity's initiative to drive more than 6,000 set-top boxes, more than 6,000 digital or IDTVs, including solar-powered TV projectors, 32 inches LED screens or IDTVs, to the market as a way of aiding an individual entity's market penetration strategy. When you do this, you are completely derailing the DTT project or DTT infrastructure that the taxpayers have so much invested into. This is the core of the issue. There are other surrounding issues regarding correspondences, and we've not heard from them. All this outburst from Kiba is having a cardinal reference to the fact that we are deviating from the roadmap. So, the role of government in the migration process. The migration from analog to digital television broadcasting would have had an impact on almost every citizen of this country, considering the pervasiveness of television access and the reliance of the populace on TV for information dissemination and education and entertainment. So with such advanced state of preparedness in DTT migration effort, what will make a government prioritize support for satellite television over digital terrestrial access that it has invested so much into? So today, we hear the Ministry of Communications is not present in this August House. Why? Because they are on the field to commission and bent on commissioning the 300 access to satellite television villages or communities. And this is done in Dansoman. It's been commissioned in Dansoman, and today Dansoman is regarded as one of the villages. So one would have thought that given tax waivers, ECOWAS levy, and all the levies that have been waived off, which was adopted as a resolution in Parliament to grant tax waivers to StarTimes to bring in equipment and materials for the deployment of the access to satellite TV for 300 villages. We would have thought that in aiding the country migrate successfully from analog to digital, we would have even pushed all this effort into waiving tax for companies who have authorized dealership from the National Communications Authority. And these authorized dealerships, examples are Melcom. They bring in a lot of Akai and other TV sets, which conform to the minimum specifications. We have Electroland bringing Samsung, we have NASCO, we have LG, we have Strong Digital, we have Multi-TV, we have a myriad of all these broadcast entities who are bringing all this equipment to the country, yet they do not have tax waivers. So why won't we rather channel this effort into making sure tax waivers are given to set-top boxes which have nothing to do with conditional accesses? And conditional access we find in the set-top box of StarTimes. This conditional access simply means that when StarTimes have their boxes on the market, they can choose to deny access to viewership or grant access to viewership. And the Ministry of Communication is doing its best to decouple the 300 access to villages project from the DTT infrastructure, which we hear now has something to do with enhancing the infrastructure. So we are trying to tell the public that there is a linkage between the access to 300 villages and the DTT project, in that StarTimes has been chosen to enhance the DTT project, of which one of the components of enhancement has to do with the same conditional access. Simply put, you cannot put a conditional access in the way of free-to-air broadcast, because it is meant to reach the people without any impediments. And the 1992 Constitution says that there shall be no impediments in the operations and establishment of any medium of mass communication in this country. So how then do you want to reach out to the people when you broadcast And then there is a system in place which gives access to either lock your channel from being watched or gives access to the channel to be watched. And the game plan is not seen. Let me blow your minds. The more you see StarTimes decoders on the market being supported by this initiative by government, it only means that you are making these StarTime boxes the de facto boxes for the nation's migration. So they start simply telling you 300 villages, 6,000 households, 900 community centers, blah, blah, blah. Remember, this initiative was launched in 2015, and in 2018, it is now being manifested. So they have the patience to penetrate the market and make sure their boxes are everywhere. And in television, viewership is key. So the message I would like to give to everyone is, in engineering or any form of science, you cannot lie. So if you lie, it will come back and enhance your integrity. So we urge Ministry of Communications, who are our leaders, who have oversight over the industry, to pay attention and listen to we, the major stakeholders. We are not dictating. And let this not run down to insults and mockery. This is a serious business affair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prince Harry Crystal. Thank you very much. We will quickly also hear from Parliament. And as you know, there's already a parliamentary intervention. We don't know what the outcome will be, but of course, a voice that we have heard on this matter from Parliament so loudly is a member of the Parliamentary Committee on Communications, Honorable Samuel Nete George. Please, let's welcome him. You're still on Joy 99.7 FM and on your multi-TV. This is your JoyNews channel. Please keep clapping for him till he gets here. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much. And a very good morning to everybody here. Thanks to Imani Ghana and Multimedia for this platform. Let me say a very good morning also to all those who are listening to us on radio and watching us on TV. I would continue along the same protocol observance mode and say all protocols observed. I'm just going to try and break this down as simply as possible, because maybe not everybody who is listening to us would understand the technicality of Prince Crystal's presentation, or as an industry player. The ordinary Ghanaian just wants to understand what is going on, what's all these things about StarTimes, what does it mean for the Ghanaian person? And that's what, myself as a member of Parliament, that's what my interest is. Like I said to the minister last weekend, there is no confusion in the minds of anybody who is an industry player, be it GIBA, be it the Parliamentary Select Committee. We're clear in our minds. The project that is being launched this morning in Dansoman, the 300 villages, satellite villages project, is a DTH project. The platform that StarTimes is again being contracted to expand is DTT. DTT and DTH are completely different platforms, and so nobody's going to confuse the two. Now, on the issue of the DTH, and I'll touch on that briefly, Prince Harry has done a detailed presentation on that. I have a huge challenge with our appetite for accepting freebies and not looking at them properly. I mean, I believe it was Mr. Kofi Bentil, who in his speech spoke about the need to be careful of Chinese gifts because they put you on your toes when you take gifts from them. We're giving a waiver of $3 million to StarTimes to bring in equipment. Did the Ministry of Communications do the basic due diligence to determine how much are the equipments that are being brought in before you give them a tax waiver of $3 million? I serve on the Parliamentary Select Committee on Communications, and I'm putting it on record that our committee did not review that document. Because it was a tax waiver agreement, it went straight to the Finance Committee. The finance people would just look at figures. I'm looking at the breakdown of what is being brought into the country. 32-inch TV screens for 300 viewing centers. Let's do simple mathematics here. Even if a TV, a 32-inch TV screen costs you $500, 300 of those is going to cost you $150,000 US. Someone should please be taking down the figures, and we'll do the calculation together. $150,000. The set-top boxes, which are the decoders that they're bringing in, for the 300 centers, it costs about $18 on the market, but let's even peg it at $20. So 20 times 300 is 6,000 Ghana cedis. Now we're told that there's going to be an additional 6,000 set-top boxes given to families and homes. So an additional 6,000 boxes times $20. That will come to what? $120,000 US. The solar-powered projectors, they go for around $600 on Amazon. But let's even peg them at $1,000 because maybe they are bringing in high-spec powered, solar-powered projectors, and they're giving 2 to each of these viewing centers. So each one is going to cost $2,000. Each center will be $2,000 times 300 centers. That's $600,000 US. 150,000, 120,000. That's what, 270,000 plus 600,000, 870,000 plus 6,000, 876,000. It's less than $1 million. Even if you add freight, the cost of equipment for the 300 villages is less than $1 million. But we're giving them a tax waiver, which should be about 15 to 20% on the cost of the items, because that is actually what a tax waiver is. We're giving them $3 million. So are we thinking as a government? Are we thinking as a people? Are we not occasioning financial loss this day? Because a tax waiver is effectively taxpayers' money that you're giving to the recipient of a tax waiver. Again, I've heard the ministry say that when we say they're doing this for a foreign entity and they're not doing this for a Ghanaian player, we're lying or we're being untruthful. And that KNET, who is building the DTT, has also received a tax waiver. Now let's break it down again and show the untruth in that assertion by the Ministry of Communications. KNET built the multi-TV platform 10 years ago. The ministry, either in this government or in the previous government in which I served in, has never given KNET a tax waiver. Not the NDC administration, not the NPP administration. KNET is enjoying a tax waiver on the construction of the DTT platform. The DTT platform does not belong to KNET. KNET is simply a contractor for government. The DTT platform is a national asset. And so if KNET is bringing in equipment to build a platform for government, and you give a waiver on taxes for equipment for government's own assets, have you given a waiver to KNET? In fact, KNET is incurring costs on this, because unlike in the Star Times case, where you've gotten Parliament to grant a waiver even before the equipment come in the case of KNET, what the government asked KNET to do was to pay the taxes and then later come for a refund. Now what KNET had to do was to go and borrow money commercially from a commercial bank at commercial interest rates of over 20%, pay the taxes, and government is paying KNET only the taxes without paying KNET for the interest on the loan that they took. So KNET, the Ghanaian company, is actually incurring a cost for paying duties to government. But the Chinese company is not being asked to front load and pay and come for a refund. The Chinese company is getting it up front. So when we speak about preferential treatment for the Chinese against the Ghanaian, we have solid basis to make that claim. Now, the issues, and I want to leave the DTH there, but just the last point on that before I go into the DTT. We as a country have a national policy, and this policy straddles 4 presidents: President Kufuor, President Mills, President Mahama, and today President Nana-Addo. In 2006, the formation of a national digital migration policy started to take shape under President Kufuor. The decision was taken that Ghana as a nation was going to move to ensuring that we had 100% penetration of digital terrestrial television. That was the policy decision taken under President Kufuor, which, even though I do not belong to his political party, I think was a sound technical position that was taken in the interest of our republic. Because it does not make economic sense or technical sense to want to push television, universal access to television, on the back of set-top boxes. In fact, technology does not support that. And so technology supports DTT across the world. And so taking that decision that as a nation we're going to move to DTT was a sound technical decision taken by the Ministry of Communication under President Kufuor. President Mills came in as president and continued along that line. President Mahama has also continued along that line. It appears under our current dispensation that we're having a rollback of about 12 years of national policy and national direction, because you appear to see a government led by the Minister for Communications now pushing for us to invest in satellite technology, in DTH, when for the past 12 years, successive governments have looked at a digital terrestrial roadmap. That is what we talk about stakeholder consultation. If the government, based on the advice of its current minister, decides that the 12 years of DTT migration that we've been working on is a wrong decision and that we want to change national policy, it is not the role and prerogative of the ministry alone to take that decision. That decision must be taken in consultation with all the stakeholders, the National Media Commission, the Media Foundation for West Africa, GIBA, the Parliamentary Select Committee, even the public, because the public is on the receiving end of any such national policy. And that is why even as governments, all successive governments have policy dialogues with the citizenry to discuss policy initiatives. The ministry has failed to engage in any such policy dialogue. The last policy intervention the ministry made was the 12th of February 2018 meeting with all the stakeholders. In fact, at that meeting, the position the ministry espoused to us was that they wanted to finalize the framework agreement on DTT. So if after meeting with us in February 2018, on the 12th of February, where you told us that you want us to have a subsequent meeting to finalize the draft policy for our DTT migration, you've taken you've had a change of mind. The right thing to do is to bring the stakeholders back and let us know that we are now moving to a DTH platform. And then you ask yourself, why would government have just spent, right now the KNET-led DTT platform, thanks to the variations, because technology is not static, technology is dynamic. Between 2015 and now, there have been variations on the project that has brought the project cost to a little over $100 million. $100 million of Ghanaian taxpayers' money has been invested in a DTT platform. You have not even started reaping 1% of the benefits of that platform, and you want to scrap it and then begin to push a new agenda, which is DTH. Now, the problems for me here appears to be what seems to my mind to be an executive affront on the judiciary. And I'll explain that. When the Ministry of Communications decided to abrogate the contract with Star Times China, and you see, we keep talking about Star Times. Let me just clarify. And Samson Ladi tried to make that explanation in his initial remarks. People who have tried to play politics with this, and I think that this is a very dangerous thing to play politics with. We shouldn't play politics. This is apolitical. This matter is a technical issue that affects Ghanaians. People say that the NDC contracted Star Times, brought Star Times into the picture, and then you terminated a contract with Star Times. Now the NPP is bringing Star Times back in, and you're saying Star Times is bad. No. Let's set the record straight. Star Times China has never ever taken part in any tender process for any DTT platform in this country. The company that was contracted on the 11th of April 2012 to build the DTT platform, that put in a bid and won, is called Star Times DTV Ghana Company Limited. And that is a 100% owned Ghanaian company owned by a gentleman who is a media player called Mauli Hedo. Mr. Mauli Hedo is a known player in the Ghanaian TV space. And so Hedo's Star Times DTV Ghana Company Limited is the one that won that contract and did not have any links at the time with Star Times China. In fact, it took them 6 months to do an assignment of their contract to Star Times China, because they had to go through all the legal and economic and financial considerations and negotiations to assign that contract. Again, let us be clear in our minds. I've put out information which has been challenged, that Star Times China failed to access the EXIM funding because they could not meet the technical requirements that were set not by the Ministry of Communications in Ghana, but by the EXIM Bank of China. And people have asked me, how is that possible? If you contracted a loan or you entered into contracts with them based on a certain terms, how come that became a problem? The original bid from StarTimes DTV Ghana came with a financial option from CDB, the Chinese Development Bank, not the Exim Bank. So when Maoli Hedros Company put in a bid, it came in with a bid or financing option from the CDB, the China Development Bank. When they sold the contract to StarTimes China, StarTimes China said they could not secure that funding again from CDB, and they would now secure funding from China Exim. China Exim gave a different set of requirements as against CDB, and it is those new requirements that StarTimes China could not meet that led to their inability to access the funds for 2 years. Now, when that happened and the contract was terminated, when a new international competitive bid was announced and the RFP was put out, StarTimes China was invited to take part in the bid. But because StarTimes China is unwilling to take part in any competitive bid, the reasons are as good as your guess. The reasons are as good as your guess. They failed to take part in that bid. But what happened for Ghana is that the original contract was supposed to cost us $118 million US. People keep saying $95.6 million, but it was a loan. $95.6 million with an interest of $22 million. So that comes to $118 million. That was the true cost of that contract. When we did an international competitive bid, it dropped the whole loan, the whole project amount to a little under $85 million US. So Ghana saved $36 million by going through a competitive bid. If our ministry today wants to do an expansion, which again, as a technical person, I disagree. You don't need an expansion of the DTT platform as it stands. But even if you want to do an expansion, why don't you subject that expansion to an international competitive bid and get the best value for money for Ghana? Again, when I say I disagree with us expanding the DTT platform, are we going to say that because there are applications for digital licenses or TV licenses, we will continue to expand the platform? So if after we increase it to 100 and there are more applications, are we going to increase again? What is the size of your market? TV stations survive on the back of marketing and advertising. What is the size of our market? If you go to statistica.com, the figures are there. South Africa's market is worth $1.2 billion US in 2016. The South African population is 59 million people. They have open free-to-air, they have only 17 free-to-air channels in South Africa, with a market that is worth 1.2 billion. The UK has a population of about 70 million people. Their market is worth 24 billion US in 2016, thanks to the Premier League. They have only 70 free-to-air channels. Ghana's market is worth 196 million. That is about 1% of the UK's market. Our population is not yet 30 million. That is less than 50%, just about 45% of the UK's population. And we already have 48 licensed FTA channels. How competitive is it? If you're not careful, you're going to see in the next 2 to 3 years what is happening in the banking sector. You have to see consolidation of media houses, because already media houses are beginning to collapse. It's true. Established media houses that we know are beginning to struggle. And if you think about this country, if you love this country, you would want to protect the media, because the media is the fourth estate of the realm. They keep us in check. And then I ask myself one question: why would our ministry pull out of arbitration with China StarTimes? Because in 2015, when a contract was terminated, and I get the signal my time is up, so I'm just going to wrap up here. In 2015, when the contract was terminated, StarTimes China commenced legal action in the courts here in Ghana. Justice Kumsin delivered judgment and actually awarded cost of $50,000 against StarTimes. StarTimes then appealed and then decided to proceed to the International Commercial Court in London. In that court again, it has been established unequivocally that Ghana did have a claim to terminate that contract. StarTimes further made a request for $200 million in settlement. And how can you be making a claim for $200 for a contract that was worth $95 million? And then the court says that fine, based on clause 41.1.3 of the contract. StarTimes is actually due some recompense if they can prove that they've done any work. StarTimes claimed in 2016 that they imported machines for the DTT platform into Ghana. The Ministry of Communication at the time's contention was, show us a supplier's invoice. When you brought machines into Ghana, you'd have paid duty. Show us the duty that you paid. StarTimes then claims that, oh, you know what, we've moved the machines to Nigeria. That is not a problem. Show us where the machines are in Nigeria. We will send technical people from NCA to go and evaluate it. Up till now, 2 years on, StarTimes has been unable to show us any supplier's invoice for any equipment. They've not been able to show us where those equipment are in Nigeria. They've not been able to show that they paid any duty to import any machines into Ghana. So on what basis do you then pull out of such an arbitration that you are winning? And the terms of the settlement is that StarTimes should come and do an evaluation of the KNet built DTT platform, and on the basis of their report, you will give them a contract. And wrapping up, I'm just going to state one thing. We do not hate China. China is a key player in the world geopolitics. We are not against China. We don't hate China. We only love our motherland, Ghana, more than we do China. And I hope our Minister of Communications will love her republic and the taxpayer better than she seems to love China. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We are still live on Joy 99.7 FM, and this is also your multi-TV channel. This is your Joy News channel on multi-TV. Now, we will welcome from the Media Foundation for West Africa the very final presentation from him. Then after that, please get ready with your questions, because they will begin to answer your questions. The Member of Parliament, they have raised a number of questions. People have raised questions about value for money, that even if you are doing an expansion or some enhancement of sort, do you need an equal amount of the original contract sum or even more than that to do that? I think it's a legitimate question, and we need answers to that. Questions have been asked that as we sit, there is an agreement. Call it an MOU, call it whatever. It's an agreement that eventually is plugging the nation into that contract with StarTimes. Meanwhile, the framework agreement to determine the contract, the loan, the modalities of the loan and repayment is not ready yet. Will Ghana have an upper hand to determine the terms that will be favorable to Ghana? I have raised the question of the Zambian experience, and it's not only in Zambia, where they came as suppliers and installers and not managers, but eventually in the contract terms they had to become managers of the platform to recover their investment. We'll ask all of those questions. Please put your hands together for Suleiman Ibrahim.
Thank you very much, Samson. Good morning, everyone. And as my colleague stated earlier, I would just say all protocols observed. For me, I think that this whole issue over the last 2 weeks, better put, has been a fairy tale. And everything around it has proven that, if anything at all, the ministry perhaps has a lot to hide, or just failing to be transparent, or perhaps not operating in the interest of our country. And I would just want to go over a few developments that gives me this conviction. First of all, I think this whole thing started by Giba issuing a very, very lengthy piece. What I received was a 26-page document, articulating concerns that the association has in relation to our digital terrestrial migration and all the issues that we now have gotten to know. Now, when that statement came out, what we heard from the Deputy Minister, Honorable George Anda, was that, well, we should ignore it because Giba is misinformed. The question that I immediately asked myself after reading Giba's statement and knowing that Giba had written to the ministry on a number of occasions without even an acknowledgement was that who should have informed Giba? So if you are now telling us that Giba is misinformed about the issues, who had the responsibility to inform Giba? on the issues. 2, after Giba raised these issues, days later, the ministry issued a statement to respond to the, whatever Giba had put out there. But on Saturday last week, the minister was saying, look, I cannot find the issues. What is Giba, what are the issues? And that was after the president of Giba had made a submission, articulated the concerns and all of that. And the minister still said, I'm at pains to establish what the issues are. And my question was, if there were no issues, why did you issue a statement yesterday to respond to Giba's statement? Now, apart from that, the minister says there's no contract. Her deputy had said there's no contract, but there's an MOU. The question was, what is the difference? There's an MOU with StarTimes to do an expansion of the digital migration infrastructure. So the question was, what is the difference? If somebody has had an MOU to implement an activity, and we all do sign MOUs, for projects. So one was at pains to establish what the differences, are or were. But of course, now we know that a contract has been done. So why were we being told that there isn't any contract? We point to examples in Malawi, in Zambia, in Kenya, and the minister says, look, Ghana is not Malawi, Ghana is not Kenya. But if you take the Zambian story, for example, in 2013, the Zambian government signed a contract with StarTimes. In that same year, later in that same year, the contract was cancelled due to issues that the government says, look, we don't think that you are better placed to deliver this contract. Subsequently, a year later, StarTimes is re-awarded the contract. And as we speak, StarTimes has the mandate to manage the Zambian Broadcasting Corporation for the next 10 to 15 years. I'm told it's even 25 years. So I'm talking about, in our case, that will be GBC, the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. So how can we be traveling in the same vehicle, driven by the same driver, StarTimes, with the same interest, with the same objective, and we say that the destination will be different? Certainly, we are headed for the same, troubles that Zambia, Malawi, Kenya, and other countries are experiencing. And then, of course, for me, it's extremely worrying when you have parliamentarians, say, we were not aware about the tax waiver. Because on Saturday, for example, the minister emphatically saying, and of course that is the truth, that it is Parliament that has the mandate to grant a tax waiver, and it is Parliament that granted the tax waiver to StarTimes. So what are the issues? And now if you have, members of that same house say, look, we were not aware of this waiver, and of course I do acknowledge that Honorable Sam George is from the minority side, but I don't want to believe that if you take the Finance Committee, it is only made up of people from the majority side. Of course, I'm sure your colleagues will be on that side. So if there are any questions, I believe that you may even want to ask your members from your side who are on the Finance Committee, why did they find it prudent to grant that tax waiver? I don't want to go into the issues of the merits or demerits of the tax waiver because other speakers have already spoken about it. And then it's also worrying when you have the chairman of the subcommittee in Parliament that is in charge of this sector, the Communications Subcommittee, Honorable Kennedy Japan, say, for example, and I heard him yesterday say, the issues or what Giba is doing is, first of all, ugly noises, and Giba is being politically manipulated. Now, for me, what is more surprising is that Kennedy Japan is the owner of Ken City Media, and Ken City that operates Net2 TV and Oman FM are members of Giba. And indeed, not too long ago, Mrs. Japan was an executive council member of Giba. So if now we are being told that Giba is being politically manipulated by the NDC, is it the case that Mrs. Japan, and her folks are being manipulated? And of course, that points to, and then finally, on these issues of pointing to the fact that it's been a journey of fairy tales, is this smart thing by StarTimes they are calling the 300 Villages Project, that we now know the first beneficiary village is in Dansoman. And of course, if you are told that the first community or the first village to benefit from the 300 villages project is in Dansoman. We may all want to go and see this beautiful village in Dansoman. But having said that, substantively, I think that for me, as somebody working with the Media Foundation for West Africa, over the last 6 months, the biggest conversations we've been having has been the sustainability of our media industry. And I loved it when the president of GIBA started his statement by saying that he always wants to sound a bit diplomatic. And I think if there was anything diplomatic or anything that GIBA failed to point out, which of course I'm sure they know, is the fact that they failed or they deliberately left out the point that what is of significant concern is the businesses of GIBA members. And that is the reality. And I don't think that we should shy away from that, because these are Ghanaian companies. These are companies that are employing thousands of Ghanaians. And I believe people from the ministry have said, look, GIBA is only fronting for its business interests. What else should they have been fronting for? And this is a Ghanaian, this is a Ghanaian association made up of broadcasters in Ghana, employing Ghanaian young people, and so on and so forth. Now, last year in August, we heard that TV3 had laid off 100 workers. Just this month, we've heard that TV Africa is closing a number of on-air programs. Just last month, we heard that EIB Network is set to lay off more than 100 of its staff. I believe that if you are a government, you should be worried about these developments. And perhaps what you may want to begin to think about is how can we support the media industry to be sustainable? Because if for nothing at all, Ghanaians are losing jobs. Young men and young women are losing jobs. And indeed, the issue of unemployment is a big thing here in our country. And then, of course, I earlier alluded to the fact that it's about the businesses of GIBA members. And that certainly should be of interest to any government. Because on Saturday, I was surprised when the minister said on the Newsfile program that, do you know what happened when the government of Ghana decided to cancel the contract with StarTimes? Do you know why the Eastern Corridor Road project stalled? Do you know that that affected China-Ghana relations, and certain facilities that were meant to be extended to Ghana were all stalled just because of the cancellation of the contract with StarTimes? My question to her was, I know that StarTimes is not a Chinese state company. It is not a company owned by the Chinese state. It is a company owned by private Chinese people. It's a private Chinese company. So if the Chinese government would take actions to demonstrate that it wants to further the interest of its, companies originating from China, why would we not want to do the same for companies that are in Ghana? And linked to that is the fact of the KNet contract. And my question was, is it the case that KNet was consulted and they indicated that they don't have the capacity to deliver the expansion that we now want to give away to StarTimes? Or is it because, certain fruits are being, financial inducements are being dangled at us, and we thought that, what we need to do is to go for, whatever the Chinese government is offering? And certainly, from all indications, I think there's just one thing, that we are going in for this because China has tied this as a condition to certain facilities that they are extending to our country. And for me, again, if there is anything that I love about what our president says, is this whole idea of Ghana beyond aid. And I would have wished and hoped that at this stage, where we are really vigorously pursuing a Ghana without aid, we would not allow ourselves to be manipulated by any aid coming from any country to do things that would not be in the interest of our nation and would not be in the interest of our citizenry. And finally, as George said, I believe and I hope that our ministry and our government will listen so that they wouldn't take these steps that they are taking that ultimately will be detrimental to the local media industry as is currently happening in Malawi, in Zambia, and in Kenya. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lemana. Thank you indeed. Okay, so it's time for your questions. We're still on Joy 99.7 FM and on your Joy News channel on Multi-TV. So our guests and our speakers are ready to take your questions. You can make your question direct to any one of them. Your question should not exceed 30 seconds. If you can, we want you to try to do that. So Chief Chris, sorry, I keep saying Chief Crystal. I spoke to Chief Crystal on Saturday. So this is Prince Harry Crystal, ready for your questions. I'm interested in the technical parts to him so that he will answer. Let's know what the expansion is involved, what is into it, the enhancement package, what is it in it that costs the country almost the same amount as the original project or even more, and if there is value for money in that regard. Andrew will take your questions for Giba, Suleimana will take your questions, and then Samuel George will also take your questions as well. So let's take about 4, 5 of you. Please put your hand up wherever you are. There's a microphone that is coming to you. Okay, so announce yourself quickly and then your question. Quick.
Thank you. My name is Samson Asake Awingubit, and I'm the Executive Secretary of Importers and Exporters Association of Ghana. And my being here is about the tax waiver. Of course, we've all reading. On the 10th of September, the GRA boss issued a statement that anybody who will be bringing goods into this country will have to pay your duty or have an insurance bond before they will allow you to go into custom bonded warehouses. On the same 17th, he came out with another letter saying, because I said it was an ill-motivated, it doesn't make investment friendly. They issued a statement canceling it, and within this same month, they came back again to say that they will implement such a policy. Now, my question to the MP, and of course, my brother from the Media Foundation, is that why should we give $300 million US tax waiver to a foreigner when Ghanaian companies are here and they are suffering? Now, to give our community, I was expecting to see them in red flags. Parliament passes laws, of course, yes, but at the point of implementation, Ghanaians can rise against and say, no, we won't agree. And the president would have to listen to Ghanaians more than business community that he's willing to. Ghana is not doing well.
Thank you, Samson.
We will not bring investors to come to this country.
So the hand that was already up before. Yes, that's supposed to be Ishra. And then please. Yes, so Ishra, and then you. Okay. And then Eric.
All right, thank you, Samson. I'm Ishra Ado, I work with Joy FM, and I'm passionate about this DTT situation, largely because I followed its progress from the UK example. There's a part of this that's called a digital dividend, where freed up spectrum becomes useful for society. I'm yet to hear the ministry articulate any such provision for us. The so-called 300 villages project is one that, in my opinion, we do not need an external intervention to achieve. As you free up the spectrum, you'll be able to transmit content on a non-digital platform for developmental purposes, instead of bringing in an external player to do same and allow for a subtle penetration agenda for a commercial entity from outside of our country. I would like to know, and I'm sad that history is not here, I'd like to know what needs analysis went into deciding that Ghana should sign up for this project that was proposed.
Thank
by,
you. Thank you,
China.
Ishra. Next question, please.
My name is Clement Oboku-Chamati, Hot FM. I want to know how much is Ghana benefiting from this new contract, that we should forget about 100 million project that we have invested in the DTT, because it's surprising if you can invest so much into a particular project, then you decide to forget about it and go for another one. So how much are we getting from the start times, the benefits? that we should forget about the DTT. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next question.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Eric Anyanyo, XYZ Broadcasting. I have two questions in 30 seconds. First one goes to Sam George. I want clarity here. You said KNET was going for a loan, commercial loan, and they were going to be paid back the tax waivers, but they were going to incur the cost, i.e. interest on the loans. I can't understand whether KNET was doing it for free or they were being too generous. I'm a bit confused there. Second one, what options are there for GEBA or Media Foundation for West Africa? Because tomorrow you are meeting the sector minister. I don't know what options you have, especially when we are concluding that we have signed a contract with Star Times. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll have Sam George address the questions directed to you specifically.
All right, thank you very much.
And we should be quick about it so that everyone can answer some questions.
On the issue of the tax waivers, it's a new policy of government that anybody who is given a tax exemption will first and foremost have to pay the tax and then subsequently come for a refund. Now, we are unclear in our minds what the case is with this particular 300 satellite villages thing, because the ministry is yet to put out any paper to stakeholders to say that these are the modalities that govern the 300 satellite program. How are they identifying beneficiary communities? What are the benchmarks? We don't know. How are the 6,000 households, 20 per each of these 300 communities, how are they being identified? We don't know. The basis for entering into this project, take for example, they say education. The multi-TV platform, which KNET built and which KNET is running, already has a certain corporate social responsibility that is actually supporting Ghanaian schools in deprived communities today, where you can have e-learning on the KNET platform. KNET is not getting any tax waiver for the equipment that they are using to support Ghanaian schools, but we're doing this for a Chinese person.
If I may just information, the minister says that KNET is being reimbursed, and therefore they should submit whatever it is and they'll be reimbursed. We've just heard that, have we not?
That comes to the question asked by Eric on what I said. Now, the minister has asked KNET, and let's be clear, what KNET is being asked to come for a reimbursement on is not KNET's personal or private enterprise, which is called multi-TV. It is on what KNET is building for government. That belongs to government. So that tax waiver.
This is the JoyNews channel. JoyNews channel will take you shortly to the Coconut Grove Hotel. But what you've just seen is the Imani JoyNews public forum on Unpacking Ghana's dance with China's media dragons, the curious case of Star Times. Are Ghanaian media owners and practitioners afraid of Chinese competition, or Ghana is simply unclear about the Chinese state-led media strategy in Africa? The program is being moderated by Samson Ladi Anyanene, and we heard from Executive Director of the Media Foundation for West Africa. Just in your shots there was Sam George, who is a member of the Communications Committee in Parliament. We know that he's opposing this particular agreement. We'll bring you many more angles to this, plus analysis even as the program continues. My name is Benes Abubedu, and this is the JoyNews channel. Up next is News Today with Daniel Datsi.